We continue now at the top of Daf Dalet Amud Beis in Masechah Shavuos. This is Shavuos Daf 4b. On the previous Amud, the Gemara said that Rebbe, when he says by the case of Yedias Hatumah that there are 4 scenarios where there is a carbon, it's not that he's simply saying the opinion of Rebbe Yishmael, but Rebbe himself actually holds like Rebbe Yishmael, as the Gemara now is in the middle of proving from a Braisa. The Braisa over here, Rebbe is in the middle of saying that you don't need it to say V'nelam twice, because once it says V'nelam one time, Mechlal Diyada. So if it says V'nelam, that means there was a lapse of awareness. That means the person did know originally. And then V'hu Yada, then it says that he knew. Hare kan shtei yediyos. That's 2 yediyos, meaning you have knowledge in the beginning and knowledge at the end, and a lapse of awareness in the interim. And so therefore, Rebbe now responding to Rebbe Akiva says, Imkain, if so, Matam and Lomar V'nelam. Why does it say V'nelam twice? We don't need V'nelam twice, like Rebbe Akiva learns from the V'nelam twice, that again you have that yediyah in the beginning, yediyah at the end, and the lapse of awareness in the middle. But Rebbe doesn't need that second V'nelam. That's L'chayev al helim tumah al helam mikdash. That's to say that the person is chayiv both in scenarios where there's a lapse of awareness of the tumah and in scenarios where there's a lapse of awareness of the mikdash. And so therefore you see that Rebbe himself actually does hold again that there are 4 scenarios, because in both scenarios of the lapse of awareness by tumah and the lapse of awareness by kodesh or mikdash, you're going to bring a carbon. Rashi over here continues, Olav yored v'nelam mimenu v'hu tameh v'nelam mimenu v'hu yada. Again, this is Rebbe Akiva's opinion. It says 2 times v'nelam, so therefore kama dafka lemigmar minei. So the first time it says it, that's to teach al helam tumah hu chayiv ve'eno chayiv al helam mikdash, that you're chayiv on helam tumah, you're chayiv by the lapse of awareness, not knowing about being tameh, but you're not chayiv if you don't know about mikdash. V'idach kro yiseruhu l'drasha, and again Rebbe Akiva holds the other one's an extra pasuk for a drasha that you're going to say hatil v'hu yada bein shrei v'nelam, that the v'hu yada goes between the 2 v'nelams. V'darish delachar shaisi yediyah nelam. The idea is that after he had knowledge, then he had a lapse of awareness. Ulamemar deboy yediyah betchila, to say again you need yediyah in the beginning. V'yediyah besof lo tzricha kra. Now Rashi notes we don't even need a pasuk for yediyah besof. Di lo yada shechata ma'ilai si carbon. Why would he bring a carbon if he did not know that he actually sinned? And again, Rebbe then responds, Imkain matam alomer, because Rebbe says you don't need that extra v'nelam, so what do we need it for? And the idea was that according to Rebbe, you're chayiv even on helam mikdash. Alma Rebbe helam mikdash nami mechayiv ki Rebbe Yishmael. The whole point over here is we see that Rebbe holds that by helam mikdash the person is by helam mikdash the person is chayiv, and again that means that Rebbe actually does hold like Rebbe Yishmael. And the Gemara continues, Eshkechon b'yedios the islay time in the nafshe. So we find there's this brisa by Yedias Hatumas that Rebbe himself holds like Rebbe Yishmael. He's not merely bringing down the opinion of Rebbe Yishmael, but Shavuos. But when it comes to Shavuos, the leslay time in the nafshe, we don't find such a source where Rebbe says the exact same thing as Rebbe Akiva. Minolan. So from where do we know that he himself holds like Rebbe Akiva? Again, maybe he's just bringing the shita of Rebbe Akiva that there are 4 scenarios that the person is chayiv a carbon, because again it would apply to future tense and past tense Shavuos. But how do we know that Rebbe himself holds like that? And the Gemara says the Svarhu that it's actually logical, because Rebbe Akiva my time kamechayiv l'shaver. What's the reason that Rebbe Akiva says that the person is liable when it comes to Shavuos that are made in the past tense? The dorish ribuye umiyute, because when he has a pasuk which can be darshaned as either a klal upratu klal or a riboy miyut or riboy, he darshans ribuye umiyute. The idea over here is that ribuye and miyute is a more inclusive kind of drasha. Rashi will explain that, but Rebbe Nami darish ribuye umiyute. When it comes to Rebbe also, he also darshans not in the klal pratu klal form, he darshans in the riboy miyut form, and therefore that's essentially more inclusive. That's why the person is chayiv when it comes to Shavuos l'sha'avar. And Rashi explains the darish ribuye umiyute midrasha de ribuye umiyute nafkale beparagimel. It's actually from a ribuye miyut that we learn out in the 3rd parak. Shelo haya doresh es hatorah b'mashmos klalos upratos ela b'mashmos ribuye umiyut. And again, we're not using klal uprat, we use the rule of ribuy umiyut. V'gabe shvuos hachi darish. So it comes out as follows when it comes to shvuos, when it comes to oz, nefesh kisi shava riba. That part of the pasuk is an inclusion. Kol hashvuos lahara lahetiv miyet. Then it says lahara lahetiv. That's an exclusion. Miyet is a riba. An exclusion limits what we included. It's saying you're only chayv on things that are similar to the exclusion, meaning future tense. And not the darshan like a klal uprat, which which is more limiting. The name lahara o lahetiv perusho shel klalo. If you did klalo prat, then lahara o lahetiv would actually be an explanation of the klal. Ve'in lach lahavi bo elohu levado hara v'atava. You would actually only bring things that are either negative or positive, velo shar dvarim, and nothing else. V'afilu lahaba, even if it is in future tense, she'eno hara v'atava. But if it's not hara or hatava, if it's not negative or positive specifically, doing bad to himself, so to speak, or good to himself, it wouldn't be included. And Rashi explains, Shekola doresh haTorah klalu prat. Anytime you darshan the Torah as a klalu prat, islay ein bechlal elamash beprat. So what you then say is, let's say you just had a klalu prat, not a klalu prat of klal. So you would say you only include the prat. And then when you would have that last klal to make it a klalu prat to klal, basar prat after that prat, like over here, that's what it actually says here. We have a klalu prat to klal or a riboy miyot to riboy, depending how you want to darshan. So dailachim tosef ala prat bechlal acharon devarim shein ben haravatov, and then you would just go include things, even things that are not for bad or for good. V'yu ke'ein haprat bilahaba, but you'd only include things that are future in the future type of shvua that are similar to the prat. V'lo l'sha'av are not something that's in the oath that's made in the past tense. She'eno domer leprat klal, which is not similar to the prat at all. Talachi ahani klal kamol lemuute. That's why the first klal comes to be as an exclusion. V'hainu domer klalu prat uklal yatadon elkein haprat. That's what it means when we say that a klalu prat uklal is only like the prat. Kilomar donat lahosef ala prat al yidei klalu achron. You add on a little through that later klal. Aval iyata don lahosef olav ela hadomelo. You can only judge it in a fashion where you're adding on what is similar. Aval adorish beriba umiyat. But let's say you darshan as riboy miyat riboy. Ein haprat perusha shel klal. So there we don't say that the prat is explaining the klal. Ela mematu b'mixas. It's just a somewhat of a limitation. Kilomar means to say lo es hakol riba. Don't include everything. Beriboy harishon in that first riboy. Ela zeh except for this v'chayotzebo, and what is similar below riboy basra mishtamalei. You don't even need the last riboy for that. You're going to include anything similar. V'chayotzebo hilkach chiyasa riboy acharina basrei. So by a riboy miyat riboy, when you then have a riboy at the end, l'rabos, but that's coming to include v'afilu shalokei naprat, even if it's like not so similar. V'lo miyat hamiyat ela davar echad haroy laotzim and aklal. We only exclude exclude one thing. Hazeh yosem and akal, the thing that should be excluded most of all. For Rabbi Akiva hachi darsh parak gimel. That's what Rabbi Akiva darshans in the third parak. L'hai kisi shav haveinu mamayit min hamiyat ela nishba levatel as a mitzvah. He only excludes a person who takes an oath to nullify a mitzvah, and so that's why again a riboy miyat riboy rather is more inclusive. It would include even shvuos that are in the past tense, and so if you darshan in that fashion, you're going to include those kinds of shvuos. And the Gemara continues, the Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa, and again this Brisa is coming to prove that Rebbe darshans riboy and miyot. The Brisa says, Rebbe says, B'chol podin b'chor adam chutz min hashtaros. You can use anything to redeem a firstborn person except for a document. Let's say you have a document that's a certain value. You can use that document to collect a certain amount. You can't use that, give that over as redemption. For Rabbanan Amri, the Rabbanan say, B'chol podin b'chor adam chutz me avodim u'shtaros u'karkos. You can redeem a b'chor adam with anything except for they exclude more. They exclude avodim, shtaros, and karkos. And the Gemara says, my time with the Rebbe, what's the reason of Rebbe? Because dorish ribuya yumayute. Because Rebbe darshans with the riboy and miyut method. What is the riboy and miyut? It says, ufdu yavni ben chodesh riba. B'yerka chakesav chamesh hashkolim miyed. It says you're going to redeem. That's an inclusion. It says it's going to be 5 shekel. 5 silver shekel is an exclusion. Tifta, then it says redeem chazar v'riba. That's another inclusion. Riba umiyut v'riba riba hakol. When you're including in that fashion, you include everything. My riba kol mili, include everything. Umay miyat, and what is being excluded? Miyat shtaros. The only thing we're going to exclude is shtaros. For Rabbanan darshi klali uprati, and the Rabbanan they darshan with the method of klal uprat as follows: Uftuyav mi ben chodesh klal b'yerga chakesef chamesh shkolim prat tifte chazer uklal. You have here a klal uprat uklal iyatadon elakain prat. When you have a klal uprat uklal, you only include things that are similar to what was specified. Mahaprat mefurish davar metaldel v'gufo mammon, just like the prat, which here is kesef chamesh shkolim, is something that can be moved, and it's something that itself has value. Af kol davar metaltel v'gufo mammon, so too it has to be anything that can move, and it has to be gufo mammon. It has to itself have that value. Yatsu karkos sheina metaltel, we exclude land which is not movable. Yatsu avodim shehukshu lekarkos, we exclude slaves, they're compared to land. And yatsu shtaros, we exclude documents afa bisha metaltel, and even though they are movable, but ain't gufo mammon, they don't have that intrinsic value. You're using it to collect, but it doesn't have that intrinsic value. And Rashi explains, chutz min ashtaros, you can't use shtaros for pidyon bechor, means to say as follows, hayachayev lo adam b'shtar heslaim. Let's say someone is chayev to pay him 5 shekel in a shtar, v'nosan ze oso shtar l'kohen b'pidyon b'no, and the person gives the shtar over to a kohen, and he wants to use that to redeem his son. Eino podid, that's not a good redemption. Aval b'shar kol devarim podin, but with other things you could redeem. For Rabbanan pligi elev masisim b'meseches bechoros, the Rabbanan argue there in the Mishnah bechoros, the Tanan ein podin lo ba'avodim v'lo b'shtaros v'lo b'karkos, because it says over there in the Mishnah, you can't redeem and you can't use avodim, shtaros, or karkos, so they exclude more items. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Ravina la'ameimar, Ravina said to Ameimar, Rebbe dorish ribuye u'miyute, is it really true that Rebbe Darshan is using the method of ribuy and miyut? V'al Rebbe klali u'prati darish, on the contrary, Rebbe does use the klal u'prat method when he darshans. The Tanyas we learned in a brayso, martzei, it says you're going to use an awl, it's a certain kind of tool. It's talking about by the Eved Ivri, he has to have his ear pierced. And it says in the pasuk, the martzei is the tool that is used to pierce his ear in order that he continues to be an Eved. Let's say he wants to be an Eved beyond the 6 years. So ainly I only know you have to use this specific tool, the martzeya. Minayin l'rabos hasul v'hasira. How do you know to include? These are various kinds of thorns. Hamachat v'makdeach v'amichtav. How do you know to include the needle? Other kinds of tools that you might be able to use in order to pierce the ear. How do you know to include all of these kinds of tools? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says v'lakachta kol davar shenilkach biyad. It says v'lakachta means to say anything that can be taken with the hand. We include all of these items. Divrei Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. These are the words of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Rabbi Omer Rebbe says martzeya. It says again a martzeya. Ma martzeya miyuchad shel mateches. Just like a martzeya is unique that it's made out of metal, af kol shel mateches. So too it must be something that's made out of metal. Rebbe over here is more limiting and saying you're only allowed to use a metal instrument. V'yamrinan, and we say on this brayso b'makom iflagi, what are they arguing about? Rebbe dorish klali uprati. Rebbe he darshans through the method of klal uprat, the more limiting way of darshaning. That's why he says it has to only be metal. Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda darish, and Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda he darshans with the method of riboy and miyut, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Hey Amud Aleph.